Welcome to this Black History Month edition of the Is This Real podcast. So February is almost over, and that's essentially the 1 month of the year where Black writers like me get given the opportunity to essentially tell stories about Black history. And companies and institutions basically get to give lip service to Black stories that I'd say often have to be filtered or edited down to, fit within these narratives that I think are very easy to essentially give. But it's put into really stark relief for me when I kind of see the current situation within the Black community and a lot of the struggles and the violence and the oppression that people face on a regular basis. Whether it's from the built-in employment that comes with living in this country, the mental health outcomes that Black folks have to deal with when it comes to living their lives and facing racism, among other things. And also, I think also the individual responsibility that's placed on people for their own problems, instead of having a system that uplifts communities and places that at the center of people's lives. So it's a really stark relief when you have things like the city of Edmonton posting on their Instagram page this quote promoting Black History Month and a museum project. And then the next few slides of their story are essentially this hockey game between the peace officers and the Edmonton Police Association. So it's a really stark relief, and it makes it difficult when, the police and those organizations have been oppressive towards Black communities for decades. And, to ignore that fact and also to ignore the events of the past couple of months, I think highlight police violence in Edmonton as a problem. We have this award that's given out by the Kiwanis Club in Edmonton called the Top Cop Award. And it's been found that 2 out of the 5 police officers who received that award were charged with assault and are investigated right now under ACERT. We have a situation with the Edmonton Police owning a plane that was held in secret that we just found out about a few weeks ago, and they're looking to buy another plane as another big ticket purchase. And they explicitly said that this is, for surveillance purposes, for, some of the work that they do. But again, the community had no idea that this was actually happening. And, we're also seeing, I think, police doubling down very heavily on this tough on crime rhetoric, where, there's a growing critique of policing coming from different segments of society. It's not coming from Indigenous and Black people anymore. I think now it's moving a little bit more into the mainstream of, white liberal folks. So now that that's happening, Chief of Police saying, he doesn't look to social media for any informations or facts. Articles being written in the Edmonton Journal defending the police by the police commissioner. So I think the police at least are doubling down, and it's very difficult and stark to see that happening during Black History Month. And especially too when we've had a death in the Black community by the hands of police in Calgary, a shooting that happened recently, where a member of the South Sudanese community, Latjor Tuel, was killed by police when he was having a mental health crisis. And I want to read this post from his stepdaughter that I think does a really good job of explaining the situation and what's going on with those directly impacted by it. So here's the post. On February 19th, my stepdad was murdered by the police. They shot him dead execution style 5 times while he was sitting down. Then they proceeded to leave his dead body on the street for 8 full fucking hours. They released a dog on him and he tried defending himself like anybody would do out of pure instinct. And then they fired round after round into his body. They rushed their police dog to the vet, but they let my dad bleed out for 8 fucking hours on the street. My dad had extensive PTSD and mental health issues. He was a child soldier back in Sudan. The police were called because he was going through an episode. They came with their weapons drawn and multiple officers and a canine unit. All for what? One singular black man who has a stick? They're spitting out lies saying that they tried reasoning with him and claiming he had a weapon that they won't specify because it was a stick. You dumb fucks tried reasoning with him for 1 minute. And how the hell are you going to reason with someone going through a full-fledged episode while you have a bunch of weapons, lights, loud dogs, and other sensory overloading shit all around? That would overwhelm anybody in their right state of mind, let alone someone going through a mental break. My dad was unjustly killed, and people seem to care more about a fucking dog that is doing fine and is well and alive, unlike my dad. This situation showed me people look at black people as less than human and seem to be more empathetic to a dog than us. I was watching a news report on YouTube, and people were calling my dad racial slurs and wishing the dog a safe and easy recovery. My dad didn't deserve this. And everybody in my family and community is still in shock. Calgary Police, you guys are incompetent, trigger-happy pigs. This was police brutality, and you guys fucked up. The video proof does not lie. ACAB until I die, BLM until I die, rest in peace, and I love you so much. You did not deserve this. I feel like that's a difficult statement to read in any circumstance, but the fact that it's 2022 and the fact that we've seen everything that we've seen since 2020, it's really difficult to read statements like that. And I think there's a lot of pitfalls that fall with taking an individual tragedy like this for a family and trying to use it to advance change in a situation where we already know so clearly all of the problems in our system that led to this happening. And I think almost all of us know clearly what's needed to address these problems to ensure that this doesn't happen to anyone and no family has to write a statement like this. So I think everything about this is already proof of what we already know, which I think makes it even more painful, and which is why I think also the focus can't be on individual stories to advance the change in a system that we already know needs to change for reasons that are proven by stories like this, but already exist without families having to suffer from tragedies like this situation. And I think it also ultimately rejects this idea of the Canadian dream, or this idea of cultural mosaic and of immigrants coming here to seek refuge from the trauma and the problems that they had in their home countries. So the victim of this crime was a child soldier in South Sudan. And I think, like many other people who come to Canada, view it as a safe place, a place where they'll receive help, a place where they can thrive with their families. But I think ultimately the failures of our system and the way it's designed, it can't handle the reality that we pat ourselves on the back thinking that we create. We can't handle the reality of bringing people into our system where we say that we're going to rehabilitate them or help them or provide them opportunities, when in reality, we just have a system that's racist and that doesn't necessarily put anything into anyone's lives except for individual responsibility, and really just telling them that they're on their own, and that ultimately if things do end up turning for the worse, you have the police to come and supposedly, de-escalate and make the situation better. So the original traumas that you have from your previous experiences, whether you come from a country that, is struggling through war, if you've been a part of that conflict yourself, all those things are amplified when you come and you have to face additional pressures. And I think also you have to contemplate with this idea that you've been sold a myth, a lie, essentially, that all of your expectations and everything that this country projected onto itself and onto others, it actually isn't true, and that your life is going to be incredibly difficult. And I've been working, and I was filming a documentary about the South Sudanese community in Edmonton and Calgary last summer, and we talked to many people in the community and filmed community events and interviews and stories surrounding death, and also I think joy and prosperity and resilience. But I think one thing that really stuck with me, and one thing I keep thinking about, is how people from the South Sudanese community explain to me their disdain for Canada and their deep sorrow and their deep sadness with seeing the reality of their lives and of their children's lives, and how punitive and how difficult things have been for them, versus what they thought it would be, and seeing how devalued their lives are. I think that's definitely stuck with me, and it's hard to come up with answers for these people, because I think, like I said before, it seems like, especially during Black History Month, we're more interested in performing and giving lip service and in advancing narratives that ignore the reality that people face, and in this moment that we live in right now. In this situation, like a lot of the other high-profile murders of Black folks, I think the family is ultimately put in a very difficult situation, and I wish them peace and whatever support they can receive during this difficult time for them. Grieving the death of a loved one and a murder in the public eye, I think is an awful situation, especially I think when it intersects with, like I said, a lot of the other issues that are faced by the Black community. So I wish the family peace in this difficult time, and I hope they can find the support that they need.